All right, so we got episode 3 of the HODL Club here. Jason is super excited about this one, I think.
What
So it
up? What
looks like
up?
it. We talked about Cosmos last time, and I wanted to kind of follow up with a quick overview of Filecoin. I have some notes prepared, so we can dig into that if you'd like, Jason.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
Sounds good. Let's
Okay.
do
So
it.
let me share my screen here. Let me know when you can see my screen.
Yep, I see it.
Okay. All right. So let's start with this one.
WTF is Web3. I love it.
Right. Yeah. So hey, I was just getting good at Web 2, right? And then somebody starts throwing out Web 3. I'm like, what the hell is that? so so yeah, I wanted to kind of start with like a catchy title, right? What the fuck is Web 3, right? So first slide, I guess like the core premise of Web 2 is centralization. And
wait.
that's
But
based on
I'm sorry. What about Web 1? What's Web 1.0?
yeah. So I guess Web 1 and Web 2 are both using a client server model, which is basically a one-to-one communication between a client that's sending a request, a server that's receiving the request, and then responding to that request, right? And this is built on top of HTTP as a protocol, right? In that sort of a model, your areas of optimization are on each end, which is your endpoint for the client and endpoint for the server, where like all kinds of technologies were built through Web 1 and Web 2, where on the client side you had devices which had more and more capabilities. Initially it was simple smartphones, and over time these smartphones started to become super powerful. You have mobile apps that are like Instagram, Facebook, etc. now, right? So that's on the client side. And on the server side, technology also evolved over time, where you had more simple in Web 1.0 is more simple websites, just purely HTML based static websites. Web 2 started having more dynamic websites, with more complexity, with working with large data sets and doing a lot of heavy lifting on the server side on the back end. But the fundamental bottleneck there was that the underlying protocol was HTTP, right? Now this is a centralized protocol, a one-to-one client server protocol that was built back in, I don't know when, 70s or 80s, right? So the entire internet is built on top of a legacy protocol, and nobody has actually been able to reinvent this client server model to kind of make it more mesh based, which is somewhat more peer-to-peer. And that's what Protocol Labs was really trying to that's the innovation that Protocol Labs was really trying to bring in. So I hope that image on that bottom right of that slide is visible. And I think the idea of centralized versus decentralized is that it's, instead of having this exclusive server, right, that completely controls all of your data and serves responses to your requests, you have a more inclusive model where anybody can become that server, right? So you could actually make a request for certain content that you desire from not just a server, but one of many servers, right? This was kind of visible in some experimentation through Napster, LimeWire, et cetera, back in the early web days when there was, peer-to-peer protocols, but there's no like incentive layer and business model around it. So like it just kind of, got into, trouble with like copyright infringements and things of that sort and just kind of faded away, right?
Yeah.
So you fast forward like, 10 to 15 years now, like, Protocol Labs over the past like, 5+ years has really built, IPFS, libp2p, and a few other protocols that are becoming this decentralized web stack. Call it, the Web3 stack that we can talk a little bit more about. So I think I covered centralized versus decentralized.
Can you also, Avinash, talk about trust when it comes to Web 2.0 versus 3.0?
Yeah, absolutely. So in terms of trust, right, you're talking about security, right? So there's standardized security, modules, protocols for encrypting your data at rest and in transit. Okay. So, I don't know, TLS, which is, a newer version of, SSL, and other, there's other, experimentation with like other encryption protocols as well. So security definitely was a concern, is still a concern, because there's questions around can this encryption be broken, right? So there's a lot of research in that space, but from what I understand, the security concerns have been dealt with and mitigated. It's the security of your data transfer, whether it's the client server model or peer-to-peer model, your security concerns will be very similar, because when you're making that request for some data from your client, having some man in the middle attack that's outside of the control of the client and the server, maybe like your ISP has like another hop in the middle, things of that sort. Those are common concerns, whether you're using the client server model or the P2P model, right? So swapping a more peer-to-peer model with client server neither adds new, well it could in some ways add new security concerns, but generally speaking don't really like change anything fundamentally in terms of how traffic flows. I hope that answers the question.
Yeah. The other thing, just to piggyback off of that, the difference between Web 2.0 and Web 3.0 from what I've seen is the idea that Web 2.0 requires you to give all of your personal data to these big, humongous, multi-billion, multi-trillion-dollar companies, Google, Amazon, Facebook, where Web 3.0, it's a zero trust environment. You don't have to give your personal info to any big conglomerate company who have all proven to abuse the rights that we've given them with our data, right? They basically just sell our data and they manipulate us based on the sensitive information that they have from us, whereas Web 3.0 eliminates that from even being part of the equation.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and I'm glad you brought up, zero trust design patterns, and then there's also this idea of zero knowledge proofs that are being incorporated into this, which is not exactly, the same thing as zero trust, but it's a way for you to, vouch for holding something without actually showing what it is. Yeah, I mean, there's very significant advantages of decentralization through this blockchain paradigm that tackle some of the problems of the Googles and the Facebooks of the world. And I think there's a Chris Dixon post on Twitter which talks about it, which really hit me when I went through that tweet thread, where he talks about how these Web 2.0 players, they kind of grew using this S curve where like, there was this like initial adoption curve where like, the first 100 or 1,000 users, when they onboarded them, they were throwing a ton of value at them, right? Like, with Gmail, you had like unlimited storage, like built-in chat inside of email, document storage, all kinds of stuff. But once that user adoption starts, going up from like 1,000 to 1,000,000 to 1,000,000,000, and you're at the top of the S curve, at that point, you're not going to grow by user growth. You're going to grow by like, extracting as much as you can from each user, right?
Yeah.
So we're at that point in the S curve for, all of these Web 2.0 players. So this is where like, it's like a significant business model concern where, they're going to try to extract more from each user. So this is kind of, not exactly aligned with the individual user.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Okay. Exactly.
Yeah. So, so, I had a slide on like, the traditional, web 7-layer OSI model. And, you're probably pretty familiar with that. And, as you can see, like
Absolutely.
anything that's in green in this 7-layer OSI model, which is like anything above the physical networking layer, which is software driven, right, is being rethought. And there's different protocols that are, you could say that they're like, experiments at the moment in some ways because they don't have true adoption yet, at scale in any form, whether it be even, IPFS or, any of the other protocols. I don't know if you've heard of Ceramic, which is trying to, disrupt the identity space by decentralizing identity. I definitely, recommend you check that out. Okay. But a lot of these protocols are trying to disrupt, different layers of this OSI model. Everything from the networking up, which is at the software level, and even at the hardware level, right? Like you could see disruption from like, at the physical level where like there's fiber optic cabling, but now like, most communication is wireless, right? So like you could also call that a disruption at the lowest layers as well, but that's separate. That's separate from this whole Web3 conversation. So moving forward here, so we kind of talked about what Web3 is compared to Web2, or what's currently considered as the web, right? Now, I wanted to kind of, we talked about the fact that the space is evolving and there's multiple protocols being built at different levels. And, I just found this slide somewhere, or the screenshot somewhere from I think this is from 2017 or 2018, when we had the previous bull run within the blockchain space, when people were trying to build, products to, disrupt the Web 2 incumbents in different spaces, right? I think this is still in play, right? So like, you talk about cloud storage here, right? Like, we're still kind of dependent on, Google Drive, Dropbox, and OneDrive, right? There's, don't get me wrong, I don't think centralized players are going anywhere. As long as there's trust and there's, checks and balances built in, I think, it's in the interest of centralized players to make sure that they're serving their users. So, I definitely think that in some cases, me being a Microsoft supporter, I don't think Microsoft has any misalignment in terms of incentives. But Google, for example, I don't think that that's the same case there, where they're actually trying to capture as much of your attention as possible, because they have an advertising business model, right? So those are the type of incumbents that don't have incentive alignment with their users, that are ripe for disruption with these Web3 protocols. So let's kind of jump into like, what IPFS is and how that relates to Filecoin and the bull case for Filecoin. So I was going to kind of let me actually go back a couple of slides here because I was going to talk about what IPFS is. So,
Okay.
The second bullet point here talks about location-based addressing versus content-based addressing, right? So that's a fundamental difference in how you access files actually. So I'm actually going to pull up a command prompt where I have IPFS running here, and I'm also going to show you the underlying folder.
Okay.
Sorry, can you see my screen?
Yes, I can.
Okay, yeah. So I've got, I just created this file called temp.txt, and if when I open it, it just says test, right? So the way you would access this file on your computer is based on a particular location. That file resides at a particular location on your hard drive. That's how you know where that file is, right? But within IPFS, how that works is each file, based on the underlying data in the file, has a hash associated with it.
Okay.
And so and that hash uniquely identifies that file. If you have that same file in two different locations, it will have the same hash. So if you have the same copy of this file on your computer, it will have the exact same hash. Now, in this case, right, my file is it's called temp.txt, and it has this hash, as you can see, right? It starts with QM and it ends with UX08, right?
Yep, I see.
Now, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to edit that file. I actually don't remember the exact command for editing it. So I'm just going to say, I'm going to add test Jasson. And when I save this file, right?
You misspelled my name.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah. Let me add that other S.
Yeah, there we go. There we go.
Right.
Much better.
Yep. So, yep. Now that I've updated that file, when I go back here and I do IPFS pin ls and look for these files, you will notice that the hash for that, if I access that same hash, it still says test, right?
Okay.
Because that I haven't added the updated file to IPFS yet. So what I'm going to do is you can either add it using the command prompt, or you can use the IPFS client that you can download on your computer to add this file. So I'm going to manually add this file to IPFS that's running on my computer. So let me quickly go to IPFS basics, and I'm adding this file here, right?
Yeah.
So should have replaced the previous file. It says imported 0 items. Let's try this again here. It's still pointing to the previous one. Let me actually go back and try to upload this. Or let me actually, I don't know if I need to delete it.
Can you remove it and add it again?
Yeah, let me just quickly do that. So this time when I add it, right? If you notice, the hash for that file,
yeah, I see it.
It's different, right? So like when I look at this, the hash now, the hash for this file has it ends with FX FXSX, I think.
Yeah.
Right. So let me try to find it here. When I list it, it should show up here. Okay. I'm not sure why it's not showing up here. I didn't really get a chance to really
but I get
on my IPFS node, but as you can see, the fundamental difference here is that it's content-based addressing and not location-based. Right. You can build in the location-based infrastructure based on whatever app you're building, instead of having that forced upon you using the client server model. right?
Right.
That's like a fundamental, like, paradigm shift. Like the first time I heard that, I was like, what the fuck? I mean, this is like, how do I do this? Right. So like, it's just like a new way of building things.
Yeah.
So it's like, it's fundamentally rethinking the, how the internet works, and actually upgrading the internet. That's kind of the fundamental core thesis here. So this has a lot of use cases, right? And going back to our Google example, right? Like, I have, this is like a personal problem of mine. I'm at like 97% of my Gmail account, right?
Wow.
And like, and Google's basically saying, hey, like, you got to pay for additional storage here, right?
Yeah.
And I'm like, hey, look, as it is, you guys are like, making money off of all this email that I have.
Exactly.
And on top of it, now I have to upgrade, pay like a yearly fee. I mean, that's, and because I'm so locked in, there's no easy way for me to, exit Google, right? Replace Google. So, there's definitely some clear misalignment here that needs to be fixed. I think, folks will build IPFS and Filecoin based solutioning to overcome this problem. And IPFS is the underlying file storage protocol. Filecoin is the incentive layer on it. So Filecoin is basically a token that you can use to have IPFS based storage stored by other people for you. So if think of that as basically a decentralized set of data centers, right? So like if somebody's got a few terabytes or petabytes of storage lying somewhere in some co-location or some data center, or maybe in like their basement in like some expensive set of servers, they can spin up a Filecoin miner, right, where they can store your data, whether that be like for archival purposes or actual real data that you want to store for your application. You can use that incentive layer of Filecoin to store that data in this managed network, as opposed to the traditional cloud provider, right?
So what you're saying, so just to make sure I'm clear, so what you're saying is, let's say I have some servers in my data center or at my house even, and I have a few terabytes, a couple of petabytes of space on my hardware. I can set myself up as a Filecoin miner, and then I can give up my storage space in exchange for Filecoin tokens. Is that kind of how it works?
That's exactly how it works. But there are some barriers to entry at the moment, because this is more of a space where they don't want anybody. Well, I think ideally in the medium to long term, Protocol Labs, the company behind Filecoin and IPFS and all these protocols, probably wants anybody from their mobile phone or even their iPad or laptop to be able to monetize their free storage. But right now there are some minimum requirements that you have to adhere to in terms of the hardware that you need to be able to become a miner. So you need a certain amount of space. I think it's like a few terabytes at least. I don't know the exact requirements off the top of my head, but there's like a pretty stringent requirement in terms of the hardware that you need to be a miner right now. You probably can't do it off of your laptop if you have a few gigabytes. But if you have some sort of a storage drive with like a few terabytes of data that you're using for whatever reason, and you have this hardware lying around and you're not using it, it could definitely be leveraged to become a miner on the Filecoin.
Yeah, it's like 21st century parking lot. You know what I'm saying? Like anyone can open their own parking lot in their hard drive right now. That's kind of crazy.
Yeah. And I just wanted to plug in this tweet from, I think it was either today or yesterday, where I don't know if you've heard of Mirror. which is a decentralized version of Medium. You're probably familiar with
Oh,
Medium,
okay.
right? So
Yeah,
like
of
Medium is
course.
a centralized blogging
Yep.
app,
Yeah,
right?
I have a few articles
So
up there. Yep.
yeah, so like Mirror is basically becoming a decentralized version of Medium. And it's, you go on Twitter or some other places, you'll see like, the who's who of, a lot of these industries built writing on Mirror. So, and Mirror
Nice.
backs up this data that people are storing on the Filecoin network,
Mm-hmm.
right? So you already see like, some significant adoption of this technology.
Yeah.
And the Filecoin network right now is, has like surprisingly scaled significantly within, at this point, close to a year of launch, right? It was launched on October 15th of last year.
Wow.
And now I think the storage space that the capacity that Filecoin has rivals Netflix, the capacity, the
Wow.
storage capacity used by Netflix, which I think is astounding, right?
That is incredible.
Yeah. So this is just going to keep scaling. So I think there's so many use cases, even moving up the layer from storage, right? Like building newer types of applications that are kind of overcoming some of the problems of the client server model or the centralized model. That IPFS and Filecoin is making a strong case for becoming the backend for these sort of new crypto apps, dapps. So if it does become this de facto storage layer for Web3 and continues to improve the other layers of the internet stack, I think this token is just gonna moon. I mean, I don't have like a price target or anything. I'm not a technical guy. Like I'm a straight up fundamentals guy. So like, this is like legit technology that's just gonna explode, in my opinion. So,
absolutely.
Yeah.
Man,
Yeah.
I got a lot of questions. Do we have any time?
Yeah.
Do we have to save them for next time?
Yeah. I mean, let's if we could do a couple of questions right now. Yeah.
So real quick, I don't know if you've looked at storage. There's a couple of other file storage protocols. And what's the difference between Filecoin versus storage, for example? Have you looked at storage at all?
I have looked at storage, right? Storage is basically similar in some ways to Filecoin in the sense that they are basically a decentralized set of storage providers, right? And they're kind of trying to be this hybrid between your like Web 2 cloud providers and something that's like fully decentralized, where there are points of centralization within the storage network, right?
Okay.
Within the Filecoin network, it is purely market-based. So there's no middleman between a decentralized storage provider and somebody who wants to store their data.
Okay.
There's basically a marketplace-based pricing that's determined by some sort of like pub sub queuing model where you basically make it's like an auction, right? Where like you basically make a request for to store a certain amount of data, and then a miner basically says, hey, like this is how much it's going to be charged for this amount of time, and if you accept that deal, you can store that data. Now that sort of storage deal making mechanism is actually used by apps that you can build upon. So I'm going to give you an example of Textile, which is basically trying to allow app builders to kind of commoditize the plumbing required to make these deals on the Filecoin network for app builders. And you can basically use Textile's API to basically, you know, store this data on Filecoin. They basically abstract away all the complexity for you, right? So Textile is one example. Estuary is another. There's a few others, Pinata and a few others that are building, right? So like, so there's like, you know, there's new layers, right? That, and it's just continuing to grow, right? So you know, I think Textile just got, you know, a pretty big investment from some, you know, top tier VC firms as well.
Wow.
So yeah, so this thing is just going to explode.
Yeah, definitely. Wow.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I got a couple more questions about the tokenomics and everything. We could probably save it till next time.
Okay. Cool. Well,
yeah. Let's wait to episode 4 for that, for the rest of my questions.
All right. Sounds good. All right. Good times, Jason.
All right, man. Good talking, man.
All right. Take it easy.